The country we're going to discuss in today's video is about to punish premarital sex with jail time. The country we're going to discuss in today's video happens to possess one of the most well-known, one of the most popular digital nomad locations in the entire world. We're going to discuss this country's newly proposed premarital sex law, what it means to you, and then we're also going to talk about the current visa options that this country has available. I believe digital nomads are going to start boycotting this country. The country in question is Indonesia. Okay, it's the most populous country in Southeast Asia. I'm going to take a look at my notes here now because I want to pass on to you some general information before we get into the difficult topic, the premarital sex law. Basically, Indonesia has a population of 276 million people. That's quite a lot. And Indonesia is also the largest Muslim country in the entire world, which is odd because Indonesia is located in Southeast Asia. Indonesia is the most southern country in Southeast Asia. And what's also important is, of course, that Indonesia is the country that possesses the most islands as well. So the country has a lot going for it in many ways, right? We're talking about 17,000 islands, including Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, Borneo, that's where I used to live, and New Guinea, right? So we got all those large islands. One of them I've gotten to know myself. And Indonesia's Muslim population is bigger than any other. 86.7% of Indonesia's population identified as Muslim, whereas only 63.5% of Malaysia's population identified as Muslim. All right, so, and people say that Malaysia is a relaxed Muslim country, which I believe to be true even in West Malaysia, where we have Kuala Lumpur, Johor Bahru, Penang, Ipoh, right? Very relaxed places, even though Malaysia is a majority Muslim country, just like Indonesia. What's also interesting about Indonesia, which I hear very few people actually talk about because they're like, hey, I'm living in Indonesia. Where, you know, technically they are not living in Indonesia because they are living in Bali or Lombok. But most of them are based in Bali. And what's really interesting about Indonesia's tourism numbers is that out of the 16.1 million foreigners that visited Indonesia in 2019, so we're talking pre-pandemic, not post-pandemic, the pre-pandemic numbers are the real numbers that we had in the past, right? So 16.1 million foreign tourists arrived in Indonesia in 2019. No question, a big chunk of those tourists to Indonesia happened to arrive from Muslim countries. You know, Indonesia got flights to Turkey, Indonesia got flights to the Middle East, all over the Middle East, you know, so because it is a Muslim country, a Muslim majority country. So we take those 16.1 million people and we can see that 6.3 million people visited Bali. A lot of them don't even go to other places of Indonesia because it is a Muslim majority country. So we're talking, you know, digital nomads, expats, they are driven to Bali, a non-Muslim majority island. It's one of the smaller islands in Indonesia, and I can give you the hard numbers right here. So Bali basically has a size of 5,700 square kilometers. 5,700 square kilometers, whereas Indonesia has a size of 1,900,000 square kilometers, just to give you an idea. So Bali's size is really only what, 0.3%, something like that. Many people, especially digital nomads, expats, entrepreneurs, they don't go to Jakarta or they don't go to Java. I'm sure some Malaysians do, but the majority actually ends up in Bali because it is a more relaxed environment to network, to live, to enjoy your life, whereas you couldn't really have that on many other islands of Indonesia. So I want to give you some more facts here because it's really impressive. So Bali, right, got the lowest Muslim population in whole Indonesia. The religion in Bali is basically Hinduism. So most Western tourists, most digital nomads, most entrepreneurs, people that want to live in Indonesia who are not Muslim, they actually go to Bali because Bali only has a 10.08% Muslim population. So life in Bali is more relaxed than it is in other places, in most other places of Indonesia. What this new law means is that foreigners as well as locals must comply to this new law. Meaning, you are not going to be allowed to have premarital sex in Indonesia. So whether you're a foreign tourist, whether you're a foreign digital nomad, an internet marketer, an investor, a crypto investor, whoever you are, you come to Indonesia and you think, okay, this new law doesn't apply to me because I'm a foreigner and it only applies to Muslims living in Indonesia. Well, you're wrong, because this law is also going to apply to the island of Bali. Even though Bali is not a Muslim majority island in Indonesia, this law is still going to apply to Bali as well. And how this law is going to work is that any person that is close to somebody who had premarital sex can report it to the local authorities. So we're talking a parent, we're talking potentially a sibling, we're talking a relative. We don't know. Right now they're saying, well, just the parents and just people that are very close. Who knows where this law is going to take you during your time in Indonesia? That is yet to be determined. It's also a question how the local authorities are going to enforce this. What kind of proof will they ask for? What kind of proof will they need in order to proceed with the prosecution? I don't have the answer to this question right now, but I think what is going to happen, and this is an unavoidable fact, Bali used to be a place of freedom. Bali used to be a place where single digital nomads hung out to have sex, to have pleasure, to enjoy the digital nomad life. And now all of a sudden, Indonesia says, we don't want any more of that. We don't want those people hang out on our most popular island anymore. You are a visitor to Bali. You are not a local person. You're not a citizen. You're not a permanent resident. So you have literally zero legal strength in that country when it comes to this kind of stuff. You're either part of the system or you are not, or you're out. I think going forward, the people who want to remain in Bali enjoy the life they want to have, because there's still a lot of positive aspects that makes it worthwhile going to Bali. Nature, networking opportunities, cheap cost of living, the weather, having a coconut while laying on the beach, right? There are all those positive elements that still exist today. Yet for the predators, right? For the digital nomad predators, for sex tourists who use the vacation in Bali to have access to all the easily available opportunities there, I think those people probably need to start looking at some different locations. You don't want to mess with the laws of a Muslim country because you're a visitor again. And just because you're Catholic, Christian, whatever your religion may be, they won't care about you. It's their country, they make the laws. So I think you either agree, you either fall in line, and look, this applies to foreigners who are currently in a relationship with an Indonesian woman. It's going to apply to them as well. It's not just going to apply to Muslim man, Muslim woman being in a relationship together. No, this is going to apply to any person living in Bali, any person living in Indonesia. You are not exempt from this law. And also, cohabitation before marriage will also be banned. So that means if you have a girlfriend, who happens to be Balinese, doesn't matter, right? You cannot live together before you are married, right? It doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you got the consent from her parents, from his parents. You are not allowed to do that. And if you decide to break this law and you end up being convicted, you could face a 6-month prison sentence, something you definitely would want to avoid. So we are not looking at great times here. We're looking at repression. And if you consider that we are in the 21st century, we're in the year of 2022. It's really tough to believe that a country is moving backwards, right? They're moving backwards, not forward. And I think that is a big issue. And I think what's going to happen is that a lot of digital nomads will actually begin boycotting Indonesia because there are better options out there. You know, you got the Philippines, a country that's pretty relaxed, Catholic majority country. And I think that's important for a Catholic or Christian man or woman who doesn't want to change who they are. You don't want to change anything about you, then that's probably where you're going to end up going. But anyway, it's really, really crazy that such strict laws on sex and relationships actually happen to be put in place at this time, because we're living in a very advanced time. But it shows you that Indonesia is a Muslim majority country that values conservatism more than the freedom of the people. And you gotta respect that. If you wanna live in a country like that, I'm a big believer in accepting the country for what it is, accepting the people for who they are. If you cannot accept the country for what it is, if you cannot accept the people for who they are, you better look elsewhere. There are other options out there. It's not worth the headaches. It's not worth the hassle. It's not worth, worrying about this stuff all the time because you are breaking the law. I wouldn't do that. I also think that this could potentially lead to a lot of blackmailing, people trying to make money off of foreigners. This is not a new concept at all. It happened already and it's happening in many places. Now let's talk about the visa situation in Indonesia. If you want to go to Indonesia as a regular tourist, guess what? Get the option to opt for the tourist visa, stay for 30 days, leave the country, come back in, do the visa run thing. Not ideal for somebody who wants to remain in the region for the long term, but it is of course the easiest way for a digital nomad to remain in the region. Indonesia was talking a lot about launching a digital nomad visa, and people were wondering when will the new digital nomad visa be launched. And now we have actually gotten to the point. So I wanted to give you the details on this as well. Basically what you're looking at is either a 5-year or a 10-year digital nomad visa. And as of right now, if this information, if this requirement stays the way it is, you will require savings of at least $140,000. So that amount must have been in your bank for a number of months, right? X months. And you need to prove that. So those, savings, those assets, they need to be liquid. We're talking about liquid assets. So we're not talking about crypto or precious metals or something. No, you need to have liquid assets of at least $140,000, and that you need to prove. And if you prove that, then you may qualify for Indonesia's second home visa. It's quite similar, to what other countries are doing. The good part about this visa, and that's what I personally like about it, is the low processing fee. So there isn't a huge donation to the government. In fact, it is just a processing fee. So unlike Malaysia's new 20-year visa, which isn't issued right away, so you're basically getting 5 years up front, and then you can apply for another 5 years. You can extend the visa multiple times, but it requires a hefty donation to the Malaysian government, something that not every person is willing to do. They don't want to write a big daddy check to the Malaysian government. So if you want to live in Indonesia, Malaysia's most southern neighbor, then that is definitely an option because it would be much cheaper for you. So I think you could go with this visa, and I'm a big believer in not handing a lot of money to a government. If you can get a visa by just proving savings of $130,000, $140,000, whatever it is, right? $140,000, depending on the currency exchange rate, then I think that's a much better deal than just handing money over to the government. I kind of prefer that kind of deal much more because I get to keep my money, right? I don't need to share my money with anyone, and that's great. Indonesia is, I believe, at this point, the only country in Southeast Asia that still requires you to be vaccinated in order to enter, which of course upsets a lot of people because they don't want to do that. It's not just about showing vaccination proof to enter the country, it's also about mask mandates which remain intact up until this point. So it's pretty crazy that Indonesia is taking such a strict stance. Now, what do you think about living in Indonesia? Do you think it's still worth it? Did you ever consider living in Bali where are you currently located in the world? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos.